factors. He was a man who wanted to be in control. He was an empire builder, bigger and better. It's a bit like Tesco's was, pilot high and sell them cheap. You know, but he was a driven man. He came from humble beginnings. They arrived in East London, and before the war, he and his two brothers, I think, there were two or three of them.
It was Bernard Delfont.
Bernard Delfont.
And Leslie Gray.
Leslie Gray, that's right. And they all did well. So that was what he was driven.
Jerry adored Lou, didn't he?
Well, of course. I think he regarded him as a father figure. And before just going back, we also had an offer in the house from Pearl and Dean. They were prepared to buy half the company, and that would have been my choice, because I think it would have given us more freedom and flexibility.
You say that would have been your choice, so you mean you were not in favour of AP Films being sold to Lou Gray?
I said to Jerry, why are we selling to start with? Because there was a buzz about what we could have become a minor Disney, I felt, in those days. And I think once you sell your birthright, you lose control of your life. And I think Jerry sold his birthright. But it was right at the time for him.
I mean, it made him a wealthy man. It made Jerry and Sylvia very wealthy, didn't it?
Well, yes, but not as... Well, I don't know whether it was the way they played their cards, but not as wealthy as they might have been. I think they would have been more fulfilled as people if they had retained the rights. Jerry, at the end of the day...
Did you tell Jerry that he shouldn't have sold to Lou?
Well, I said to Jerry, in as much as I asked him the question, why are we selling? I think that is the question. Why, if you say to somebody, why are we doing it? It signals that you're not wholly supporting what's going to happen. But as a junior member, you go with the flow, and I did. And I say the honeymoon with ATV was marvellous, but the marriage wasn't quite so enjoyable.
And did the sale to ATV make you wealthy?
Well, I got a capital sum, which in those days was, I think it probably paid off the mortgage, but the mortgage was very small. So we're not wealthy, but I think we've had a charmed life. I was talking to some of your colleagues out there just now, and the things I did after Thunderbirds involved, I love name dropping, so do forgive me. We did, I did Kate Bush's first book. We were merchandising agents for the UK and consultants in Europe for ABBA. Which was absolutely marvellous. I remember Agneta kissed me here once, and I didn't wash my face for 6 weeks. We set up a company with a guy from South Africa, and we handled the Power Rangers. We did, I make you laugh, we did the World Wrestling Federation. And I'm not into wrestling, but it was very commercial. Kate, I was a consultant with for Albert Fennell, another Fennell, Albert Fennell, on the Avengers. I took them to South Africa in 1976, in the days of apartheid. They kept ringing me, saying, "Come to South Africa." I said, "Why?" They wanted contact with the world, and they weren't getting it. So I went to Albert and said, "We've had this invitation. What do you think?" He said, "Now, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, there's nothing to be lost by going, because if we play our cards, we're not necessarily supporting apartheid." But we went down there. We had a marvelous time. The only problem at the end of the proceedings, we had money in the bank because we sold some quite nice rights, and did a deal with South African breweries for Purdy, lovely Joanna Lumley, And it all generated advances, whatever. And came the time we were leaving, and I said, well, we'd like to take this money back to the UK. And they said, we can't. I said, well, hang on, we've come down here with goodwill, and we want, we'd like a bit of cooperation. So I was given the opportunity of meeting the Minister of Finance in Pretoria. So I went over to Pretoria, and I was ushered into this room, and there was this silhouette sitting against the window, the sun shining in right in my face. And to this day, I don't know whether that guy was black or white. I promise you, and we had a long chat, and I put my spiel down, as I just told you. And he said, I think we can help you. And he gave me the name of somebody at Barclays DCO, which was the Barclays branch in South Africa at the time. Stands for Dominions, Colonies and Overseas. I think it's wonderful that those days are gone. I went to see these people, and they cleared the money, and I was able to get it back to the UK. So I came back to Swile, but I said, we've had a wonderful time, and here's some money for you. And he was quite pleased and grateful, because they were on a tight budget, and it helped them. Anyway, I go on a bit, but...
well, it seems to me that Stingray took the format of Fireball XL5 and basically transferred it underwater. Nothing wrong with that. Were you ever involved in the creation of the formats for the series at AP Films?
Yes, the way it used to work, there were 5 of us, Jerry and Sylvia, John, Reed and Reg Hill. And we had brainstorming sessions. We'd sit in around the table with some drawings. Reg was brilliant as an artist, and he produced some outlines of the concept. Jerry had got the storyline, Sylvia had got the characters, and they would go on the table, and we were free to comment, literally free, and if we criticised, we listened to. So the answer is yes. I wouldn't say, I mean, the way it worked, we put the ideas in the pond, and if they floated, they were adopted. If they sank, they were forgotten. So,
were any of the series set up with merchandising in mind?
Oh, very much so. I mean, once they realised the potential of licensing, it was on the agenda. What can we merchandise? I mean, to that extent, we created that lovely character called Zuni. Which, do you remember?
Oh, yes.
Well, Zuni didn't work as a licensing exercise. I don't know why.
It was a bizarre-looking thing, it has to be said.
Well, that you probably said before. Explain why.
Oh.
But we tried.
A sort of space chip.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, tell me why you came up with the name Century 21, because I think from the researches that we did. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's have a look at what's on the screen now. This is a character merchandise sheet, which was produced by AP Films. I'm guessing in 64 or 65.
I remember it well.
Yes, which is. No, I mean, I would say. I mean, nowadays in the industry, we would call this a style guide.
Yes.
But I guess this was the forerunner of the modern style guide.
That's right.
And you would have produced these for toy manufacturers?
Yes, yes.
It's a fantastic thing, it's very detailed.
Well, it did 2 things. It was a promotional sheet, and it was a style guide. It gave some idea of the potential and the scope and the range of things that were available.
Were you the first people to do this, do you know?
Well, yeah, in a word, probably. I mean, it was early days. The Financial Times ran an article on merchandising, and that's where the expression came from. And I haven't got a copy, but I was dubbed the High Priest of Merchandising. Now, I don't know whether I like that or not, but I'm happy to tell you about it.
Now, in the early 1960s, you came up with the name Century 21, yeah. Didn't you? Which we believe that Jerry. Now, this is a document I think from 1962,
right,
which Reg Hill prepared. And Century 21 was, obviously Jerry liked the name very much because he wanted to call Fireball XL5 Century 21. But the name lingered for a while, didn't it? And Jerry himself used to always pronounce it Century 21.
Yes.
When I spoke to him, and speaking to some of his colleagues now, they still do. But can you tell us definitively, is the man who came up with it, is it Century 21 or Century 21?
Well, I always, I'll tell you why I created it all. AP Films was great, but what does it mean? It doesn't mean very much. And I felt we need something descriptive of what we were doing and where we were going. And it was a moment of, I can't remember, an inspiration. I thought, well, it's very simple, really. We are living in, our projects are living in the 21st century, Century 21. And that's how I put it on the table. And there were other, I think there was one other Century 21, because we had a problem with the company name initially, but eventually, rolled the film on to the mid-70s, the name Century 21 Limited became available, and I registered it. It's since gone, but I won't bore you with that one. So I think it was a wonderful umbrella for the group. And the right name. But
so initially Jerry adopted it as the title for what became Fireball XL5. But before, I mean, as we all know, he eventually changed the name of his company from AP Films to Century 21.
Yes.
But before he did that, you had another application for the name Century 21, and that was a comic, wasn't it?
Well,
which you created. You created a comic called TV Century 21.
Yes, I think when you get to a certain age, you're allowed to, well, speak for yourself. I was, again, probably cycling in Burnham Beaches, which is only over the road from here, and thinking about what we could do. We had a comic strip with TV comic, and there was a certain resistance about people would take a license ostensibly on their terms. So there was a limit of what you could do and how you could play it. So I thought, well, hang on a moment, let's think and do it ourselves. So by this time, I'd met Alan Fennell quite a few times, and we'd had a chat about creative things. And we sat down, and I gave him a brief for a dummy, we used to call it a dummy, of a comic. I mean, the comic is a misnomer, in fact. And I said, there's Eagle, that's the format I envisage, with a compilation of all the characters and properties we've got. And he got it in one. And I mean, Alan was a very clever and brilliant man, and a nice guy. And he went away, and 3 weeks later he came back with this wonderful piece. It was almost as exciting as the book that Marcus has produced for this occasion, which I think is wonderful. I mean, anyway, this thing, it was a goer. I said, this is going to happen. And I took it to Collins, the publisher, and they said, well, we think it's great, but he said, it's not really our scene. So I knocked on a few doors and eventually got a warm reception at the News of the World, of all places. They were a strange company. They were run by the Carr family. William Carr was the chief executive, but he used to start the day. They had an office, a panelled office in just round the corner from Sloane Square, Clifton Place, I think. You start the day with a half bottle of whiskey, which is not, I don't think it's a good way to start the day. And his nephew, Clive Carr, who I've lost touch with now, he was a director of Arsenal Football Club, but which didn't fit his image, but I used to go to Arsenal, so I must be careful. And I met Clive, and I showed him the dummy, and we talked, because they had a subsidiary company called City Magazines, so he knew all about magazine distribution and so forth, so we hadn't got to go through a learning curve. So he fell in love with the idea. So prior to meeting up with News of the World, I went to Lou Grade and I said, we've got this wonderful opportunity, this product, and I think we ought to do it ourselves. Can we have £30,000, please? And Lou doesn't like giving money away like that, so he said, no, I think we ought to license it. So you don't argue with Lou. So I went away a bit chastened and said, right, I'll do something else with it. And I went to News the World. And I came away with an excellent deal, 5% royalty and half the profits, which was pretty good, I thought. So I went to Lou and I said, we've got a wonderful deal here, let's go. He said next fast ball he bowled, he said, no, go and see Hugh Cudlip. And Hugh Cudlip was the chief honcho at the Daily Mirror. So I paddled off to the Daily Mirror house, and I had a good reception for Hugh. And he said, well, this is what we got. He said, well, what's the deal? I said, well, this is the deal. He said, we'll match it. I said, I think you've got to do better than that. I said, I'm not going to use the World as a stalking horse. I said, you've got to, and he was half-hearted about it. So I decided we'd go with News the World. And I won't say the rest is history, but it was a great partnership for them and for us. And that's the value. I mean, partnerships should be good for both sides. If it's one-way traffic, they don't work. And I remember coming up, I'm now living north of Liverpool, which is great. I remember going to Liverpool, I think it's in the book, pressing a button on a huge printing machine as long as this room to print. The first print run was 700,000 copies, which was a bit ambitious.
Oh, well, let's have a look at this picture we're looking at. It's on the screen now.
Oh, that's me with my mouth open, which is what you always is.
So that's you. That's you in the centre. I mean, you can see Jerry there as well.
That's Jerry. That's John, Little John.
With moustache.
Yes.
Now, John Little John was
the circulation director.
A very happy man, I presume.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And is that issue 1? Can anyone see it? No, I think that's issue 1.
It must be issue 1.
TV Century 21.
Yes, yes, and that was, we were flying. It was absolutely wonderful.
No, I believe Jerry had quite a big input into the format, didn't he? I mean, Jerry told me
wanted it
to look like a newspaper.
Well, we took the Eagle format, the size, and with Jerry's input, we translated it into the newspaper of tomorrow. We indeed with tomorrow's date. Well, next 100 years date on.
Yeah.
So. Oh yes, but the seed, highlights a claim that I planted the seed.
Well, I think we're all very grateful that you did. I mean, there's lots.
Well, it was fun.
Yeah. Now, TV Century 21 introduced the characters of Parker and Penelope, and it led very neatly into the launch of Thunderbirds.
Right.
Now, was Thunderbirds, in terms of licensing, because licensing and merchandising was your responsibility, wasn't it? Was Thunderbirds the most successful property for you?
Well, I would say it was the peak of the company. Yes, it was right. No doubt. We built a reputation, with Supercar, Stingray, Fireball, etc. And Thunderbirds, it was a much easier sell than when we started.
I mean, looking at the format of the programme, it could well have been configured for licensing purposes.
Well, that's right.
Was that the case?
Of course.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you knew that if there was a fleet of 5 vehicles, that could be 5 toys that you could...
But it wasn't, I mean, some merchandising programmes are a bit contrived. I think the joy of Thunderbirds, it was natural, there was a reason for everything in the series.
Yes.
So they weren't just planted there. But Thunderbird 5 might have been a bit irrelevant, but...
Well, actually, as if by magic, here is our old friend Thunderbird 5. Yeah. And on the cover, in fact, of Toys International, which is a trade magazine.
Well, it was probably the most realistic and feasible ship. I mean, all the others were... Thunderbird 3 was... which was the Rocky 4?
The space rocket was Thunderbird 3. Yeah.
3. That was feasible. Thunderbird 2 was brilliant concept, but hardly feasible. Well, it was good. It was good.
It's my favourite Thunderbird.
No, I think from a practical point of view, you couldn't drive it, could you?
No, well, indeed. Okay. Well, it seems to me that at some point in the 1960s, you decided that AP Films, which was now becoming Century 21, because the title changed. It seemed to me at that point you decided that the company should actually start to manufacture as well as to license. Now, you'd already, as you just said just now, you'd already been to Lou Grade and suggested to Lou that you should be manufacturing your own comic, which sadly he didn't agree with. But you also...
We got halfway there.
You got halfway there, yeah. But you also felt that you should be manufacturing your own toys, I believe. And what we're looking at on screen here is an advert, a trade advert from a company called J. Rosenthal. Now,
That's right.
Now tell us about your plans to actually make toys as opposed to license them.
Well, in retrospect, I think this idea came a bit too late. We should have had it before in our program. But anyway, Jack Rosenthal was a very he was with the toy company and decided to set up on his own. And from a standing start, he built a reasonably substantial company. And we met in the circuit somehow. I don't know how we met, but we met and we had a nice chat. And I trailed the thought. He said, "How would you like to be part of it?" And he responded to that. And we agreed an outline deal, which I took to Lou Grade, and he passed it on to his... Lou was constantly looking for a successor, and he was brilliant at managing, but he never had any success finding a successor. This chap was a fellow called Robin Gill. He came from TNT television, I think. There were two Gills in the company, Jack Gill, who went on to produce Titanic, which was the end of ATV.
Yeah, raise the Titanic, we should say.
Yes. The raise side, well, in fact, instead of
the two films could be more different, could they, in terms of box office?
So, Robin Gill took the concept of acquiring Rosenthal's toys over, which was fine, but we ended up paying twice what I'd agreed with Jack. But that's a story. But the idea was that toy manufacturing in those days was reasonably segmented, and there were die cast, inflatables, there were a whole series of things. I can't remember all the names. And I thought, well, we could carve ourselves a niche for our own toy company. And I think if we'd done it 2 years earlier, it probably would have... It did prosper for a while, but it overcalled its hand. And Jack had these private meetings with a board member of ATV, his name escapes me at the moment, and he was, because I was chairman of the company at the time, so should have been aware of everything that was going on. And he got the okay to make investments, i.e. develop new ideas, without reference. And I only discovered this quite by chance, and this was one of the things which soured me to what we were doing. And there's only... anyway, I won't go that further with that. So it was successful to a point. It could have been more successful if we played it differently. But you can't get everything right. You can try. But,
I remember asking Jay once about something called Project Sword.
Yes.
And he initially just couldn't remember it at all. And then he came back to me and said, yes, that was something that was done without my input or knowledge. He wasn't very happy about it. So would that be one of the instances we were talking about of Jack Rosenthal?
Well, I think perhaps, but it certainly wasn't done without Jerry's knowledge. It was Jack Rosenthal's idea.
Right.
And he brought it to me, and I said, well, this has got legs. I think Jerry's discomfort with it was that if it happened that way round, he wouldn't be able to lay claim to it being a Jerry Anderson concept.
And that was important to him. The ideas had to come from him.
That was the way he wanted it, and that's the way we were happy to play it. Because every time a new idea came up, it was always Jerry and Sylvia, who wrote the pilot script, and then put down a marker for the series.
And in your opinion, did the ideas come from Jerry and Sylvia, or do you think that Jerry really was the principal ideas man?
Jerry was on the starting line. He fired the starting gun, but he wasn't. He was able to talk to his confidants and the people he trusted on ideas. I mean, blowing my own trumpet again, we were sitting down one day and talking about Terrorhawks, and we wanted an opening sequence that would have some impact. And I said, what about a vortex, you see? And Jerry scratched himself and he said, what vortex? Explain to me. So I told him what a vortex was, and I think it was adopted for the opening sequence. And so I'm happy for this was the value of a team, and if you've got a team, you all work together. Yeah. And Jerry was the leader, and I was happy for him to be the leader. And as long as you've got faith and confidence in your leader, you'll die with him, won't you? It's when you lose confidence, for whatever reason, that things change.
You once told me that he was very happy to apportion credits all over the place, as long as his name was over the title.
Well, I suppose, yes, okay. Well, I produced a record called Journey to the Moon, 5XL5, and I got hold of Roger Moore. Do you remember Roger Moore of
Patrick Moore? Yeah.
Patrick Moore. My mind is going, but never mind. Patrick Moore. And I met him in the green room just off the Strand, and we had lunch. And he said, Keith, he said, nice to meet you. He said, I must tell you before we start that I'm not very good at business. And that put me on my guard. Because anybody who tells you they're not good at business, they're probably brilliant. He was a charming man. Ex-headmaster, bachelor. He used to live with his mother in Croydon. Moved from Croydon. Oh, he had a wonderful telescope in the garden. And you had to look at his telescope. And when the cloud or the light pollution got too much, they moved down to Selsey Bill, I think, where he lived on the south coast. But he was a character and a half, and, great man. But he was our technical consultant on that record. So if anybody wanted to complain about it, I said, speak to Patrick Moore.
Now we're looking at a picture of Sylvia and Jerry at, I think, London Airport.
Yeah.
And they're about to send the Captain Scarlet puppets on a promotional tour of Japan. Now, was Captain Scarlet as big a property for you as Thunderbirds had been?
No.
No.
No, it was a different league. I didn't regard it as a children's property. It was more mature, it had more side issues. I thought it was a bit sinister at the time.
It was very militaristic, wasn't it?
Oh, well, it was indeed. So it was difficult. It was a difficult sell. People didn't want to sign up for it.
Right. Right.
So the answer is no.
Okay. And after Captain Scarlet, you then went into Joe 90, which I think is a brilliant concept. But was that successful for you?
Well, I think that we were firing our ammunition too fast. People need time with properties. It shouldn't be a one-night wonder. And I think the mistake we didn't make more Thunderbird was a big mistake. We should have kept Captain Scarlet down the line and made a second series of Thunderbirds.
Why didn't you make more Thunderbirds? Were you privy to that?
I'll tell you why. Because Lou Gray, he had a wonderful offer for a network deal for Thunderbirds in America. NBC were prepared to pay $7 million, which was quite a lot of money in those days. And
it's a fair bit now.
Well, and he didn't think it was enough.
Right.
And I remember Jerry took the call, and he said, Lou's turned down the deal for $7 million. And we all said, well, suppose he knows what he's doing. Well, the show ended up in syndication. That's selling it piece by piece to the various stations around the country. Well, it never has the same impact. If you have a network distribution, everybody sees it at the same time, give or take the time differences. syndication, it's piecemeal, and people are playing it here and there, and it's all over the place. So it didn't have the impact that it should have had. And Lou wanted something new. And he almost said, I want a new program. And we sat down, and Captain Scarlet emerged.
So can we presume from that the only way Lou could justify the production cost of Thunderbirds was with a network deal? Or is this presumption on our part?
Well,
I mean, presumably there was a reason why it was easier for him to throw the dice again than it was to sell a second or third series of Thunderbirds.
yeah, well, he had to throw the dice again or keep the wheel turning, because you build yourself a monster. It's the wheel's turning, or the animal's there. It's got to be fed. So he needed a new product, didn't he? If he'd succeeded in selling Thunderbirds to America, that would have fulfilled the need for the next couple of years, from our perspective.
But you think he overvalued it?
Yes.
I mean, there must have been a sense by the time Joe 90 came along that you were in competition